client's behest. Yeah. Just not a reset by any means. I think we're doing lots of stuff brilliantly, but there's also a lot of room for improvement. And I think both from the quarter starting again, or a new quarter Q4 starting on Monday, but also with John moving to Peterborough 1, felt quite opportune just to iron out new processes, revisit things that have worked well, stop, start, continue, and all that good stuff. The agenda that I shared was completely light, but I think they're all topics which John and Sophie, I believe, are aligned with as either areas where we can improve or things which maybe are outside of their area of control that we can improve. But I am easy to that change to a certain extent. So with that said, with the loose agenda, with the one of the primary barriers that you both identified in PARS and that you believe is a obstacle toward performance, JCP engagement. What do you do at the moment, I guess, if we set the scene? What's the current workflow and process? Because before we look at what we can do to remedy or what might have been discussed already and looked at, what's the current workflow?
What, with the JCP?
Yeah.
It's just, at the moment, it's a very speculative email that's being sent, but I understand why they don't respond, because it's like a list of 20 plus names, whether it's for find out where they're working or engagement or a status update of where they're at. I understand why John never responds to the email, because it's like a list of 20, 25, 30 names every fortnight. So that's pretty much the engagement level we're at, unless I get invited into a JCP call, or yeah, that's pretty much it.
Sophie, does that echo your views?
Yeah, we basically send an email with like an individual name, and then the list just gets longer and longer, and then it probably just gets lost.
I think operationally there'll be a need from us why we do what we do, though. So, Jill, thoughts on?
I think we've already got an update on that, haven't we, Jason, from this morning's call?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think, unless anything happened after I kind of left the call, I don't think it's kind of finalised at the minute. But we discussed with them kind of the email that we've got set up, so, you know, like the Peterborough restart email address. So I think what we're going to communicate to the team from kind of next week is that they don't send individual emails themselves, because I think what John is doing is John's getting bogged down with just so much stuff that is kind of coming his way.
Yeah, he said to me he had like 200 emails from having a week and a half off. Obviously, they're not all from us, but obviously we're going to get lost. Not us as me and Soph, but EAs and everyone are going to get lost within that anyway. So
yeah. So I think through that inbox, which all of us on this call have got access to, and probably plus Labika, Mark, I think, when it was set up.
Yep. Emma as well.
Yeah, not that Emma's around any longer, but we can. So at least now we can control that, because if we go out to the EAs and kind of say you don't send anything anymore, we can control that ourselves. And then I suppose we can make sure that when you're sending something, John, or you're sending something, Soph, again, it's not getting lost in amongst a sea of stuff, because he's only going to have certain emails that he needs to respond to. And if he responds back to the inbox as well, anybody can pick it up. I think for you two separately, from a rapid response point of view, we mentioned, Jill, or I mentioned earlier on, about if we can get him for like another hour per week, maybe. Now, they've got massive stresses and strains at the minute with their resourcing. So then what Andrew kind of said is they want that to happen, absolutely, but they need to he just needs to understand what him and John might also kind of get dragged into. I mean, primarily, I think they're still going to be here from us from a restart point of view, but it's probably not quite as simple as if they were resourced to the hilt. So he's going to come back. So what I suggested is, halfway house, where maybe on a Tuesday and a Wednesday we try and get an hour, whether that's a face-to-face, whether that be via a phone call. That would definitely help to go through some of the more urgent stuff. We've obviously got our 10 o'clock call on a Friday that still happens, and we can extend that to any of us, I suppose, on this call. But the problem with that is, again, that's only a kind of a finite amount of time as well, and we're always going to be kind of struggling to decide kind of what is priority. And I suppose that's probably where, John, you moving into kind of Jill's team, and kind of Mark, you having kind of Soph, we can work out kind of some of the priorities that go on as well. Because I guess all of us, and I have my priorities as well. My priorities are, this morning, were like self-employment. So, I mean, John didn't give me any direct answers, but I know that he's still got those emails in his inbox, and he's promised to respond to me. That's that's kind of my urgency. You will have your set of urgencies, Jill. You might have Mark. Same with you and John, and you kind of Soph as well. So we're probably going to have to kind of just fine tune that, but it seems as though they were open to that, because I think
I don't want to scare John though with the frequency, because like me and Sophie spoke previously, we don't need to see him like once a week.
No, I said
If
it might
we-
be once. It might be once a
Once a
fortnight,
fortnight, once a month.
Yeah.
That's literally, because our issue is if we don't speak to him once a month, the list just grows. Whereas once a month, we'll shrink that list massively, and it won't be a list of 40, it'll be a list of 10 that every time we see him every month.
Yeah.
If we see him once a week, eventually we'll have nothing to speak to him about.
Well, and it could be that then avoids the emails. I guess this is
Yeah.
what we've got to kind of test out the water a little bit, because if we can probably, if we've got an hour or 2 hours effectively, a bit on a Friday and then another set hour in the middle of the week, that might be enough just literally to go through line by line by line without needing to send an email. So I don't know. We're just gonna have to test it and kind of see how we go. But I think Andrew's going to come back to us and just kind of let us know. Is that the impression you got, Jill, as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've missed a little bit of the call, but
No.
because Debbie just came down about her trolley and her tables.
Oh, okay.
Which I've said we'll take up as soon as we've finished.
We'll sort out later on. No, I was just
Yep.
saying, because John kind of just said we probably wouldn't need kind of a John Corston hour every single week face to face. It might be once a month or once a fortnight. And I said, well, it just depends, because if we got in for an hour every week, that would probably do away eventually with the emails, because
Yep.
we wouldn't have to send an email. Then we could just keep our own list, get in front of him, and then just go through that. So
Yep.
I don't know. We're just gonna have to wait and see when they come back to us and work out what is the best. I guess in the meantime, if we can stop all the traffic going from everybody else, and then probably collate stuff between us, because even though, John, you're moving under Jill, as I kind of said to you the other day, and with an RRA point of view, you and Soph need to kind of work very closely together, because when one of you goes off, the other one kind of picks up, and vice versa. And I think even though you've got your kind of set monthly cohorts, you kind of know a lot of the names in the frame in any case there. So it works well that is kind of paired up, and you'll be working together still on that. So whether you pull together a central email on behalf of both of you, whether you kind of do one each for your own kind of specific monthly cohorts, I suppose is entirely up to you. You tend to go in, Jill, with more kind of job start related stuff. Probably you have less reason to go to him directly, Mark, but probably so. I guess I tend to do the self-employment stuff, but if you've got stuff, either you do it yourself or you feed it through. So even if on a weekly basis we only sent one email from each of us, I just send my self-employment stuff, you do your bits for your job starts, Jill, you do your bits for your job starts, Mark, Soph and John, you do your bits in the background. He's only ever getting 5 emails, and it's going to be a lot easier to condense. I don't know.
Sounds good.
I think we've got a plan. It's probably not nailed on at the minute, but there's a plan, I guess.
So
And
we had
Andrew's in on. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Yes,
Okay,
go on.
And,
Yeah,
and
yeah. What day? Yeah.
Andrew's in on Tuesday next week, so we can have a chat and see if he's put anything together and finalised it and push him a bit more on Tuesday.
Amazing. Do also say, do we need to create a tracker of some sort? Do we run a communication tracker that has those EA requests? Like how are we going to collate them?
Yeah, we probably need to build some in the background, don't we?
For, but for what purpose? Like if it's going to be if it's, for example, the Friday you're going to speak to Andrew and John, Jason, surely everyone just sends requests to you, no? And then you just, when the request comes back, you send them back out.
Well,
we just create an Excel for the sake of creating an Excel.
It depends whether everybody's always around on a Friday, or I suppose it depends. I don't really know what EAs are asking for, to be quite honest with you. I mean, you get stuff bumped through more to you, Jill, I guess, don't you? Because you're on those calls most weeks. It's only I ask for it really when you're not around.
So I usually ask the EAs to email me, and then I have a John Andrew call folder, and I literally go through the email, get the answer, and send it straight back to the EA. So I open the email, see what it is, participant's name, date of birth into the chat for John. He tells me, I type it in and send it back to the EA. The only other ones I have on my pad are if they come through on Teams, and then I come and speak to people about them.
It doesn't need to be a tracker, John, but those emails that John's now going to lose through to the central thing, if that slows down chocks, easement processes, if it slows down job entries, if it slows down anything really, then the risk of...
John does the chock on the call. So if he says, oh yeah, that person's moved into no work related, he literally types the chock and sends it while we're on the call. So that's why we get a lot of chocks on a Monday.
Or even late on a Friday afternoon, because they do come through quite quick. And if validations or whoever is picking those up, we'll get emails kind of pinging to us all the time, won't we? Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so the restart mailbox. So from Monday.
Well, I think we need to comms it to everybody so that every individual EA kind of stops. But yeah, there's no reason why. I think you two both got access to that, Soph and John, haven't you? Is that
I need
or do you need to set that up on your Outlook?
I think I might need to set it up. I think if Mark Mark can show us how, then I will do. I know you sent the initial email invite thing.
I can't remember the exact keystrokes, but yeah, it's
you can all access it through web Outlook really easily. Just click on account at the top right and click change user. Just click change user to restart.peterborough, and it'll access for you because you've all got admin privileges. On Outlook, you're gonna have to physically go through the add account process.
Yeah, I'll sit with you, and then we'll sit with you after this.
I'm just looking for the link now so I can get in. It isn't difficult, but if anyone doesn't know, I'll show it. I'll help everyone get set up before Monday. Or on
I've already got mine set up then, and then when you go into, if you click on new email, once you got your drop down, it then gives you a little drop down to say, do I want to send it from jason.dilly@read.com, or do I want to flick down and send it from restart.peterborough@read.com? But I suppose it's just remembering that in future for when you're sending stuff out, just to make sure you're sending it and from the same or the correct the correct mailbox. Yes, that's the word I was looking for. One of those anyway. And I presume, because we've not really kind of tested stuff coming back in, but I presume once we get an email coming in, again, it will just kind of show within that inbox that it's coming in, won't it?
Yeah. If
good.
Any of you just click on your browser homepage right now, it'll take you to the Bing homepage, and to check your access, all you're going to do is click on your name at the top right next to the word protected. It'll have your name and your picture, and you should have a switch account button there, so you can access it through the web browser. But I will show everyone else to access it for Outlook as well. But I'll grab you all one by one after this call, or between now and Monday for that.
Perfect.
Okay, so comms. I think probably the bigger stuff is all still to come, and it's all pertaining to sort of engagement and attendance and bums on seat, because I think we would all agree that the first notification 1K, 2K, and standard outcome numbers that you both pump through they're great. The sort of best in class levels. However, we haven't at the present got the engagement from participants to match that. And I would posit the idea that if we do get to a point of your engagement and your attendance matching that of the average first job EA, your numbers would only get better. The quality of the job would only get better, and we can start to influence outcomes to a bit more of a accurate degree, rather than whatever it is now, where we we default to whatever the JCP might tell us or whatever we've heard. We can't really influence whether they're going to get to outcome quicker and that sort of thing. I don't know what everyone's thoughts are, but what do we look to implement to uplift engagement? I banged a couple of ideas in there that I spoke to John about previously, like a rapid response day and doing things in the near future that we can do to sort of unlock engagement with cohorts sort of en masse. But I guess it's about how we sustain that and make it sustainable going forwards.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke last week about this. Like my dialogue usage, Sophie's has always been very good anyway, but mine has never been better. Like the amount of comms I'm sending out, and then we've got a rapid response job club set up now for every third Thursday of the week with Tara. So obviously you've got that skill in there as well. Obviously communicating it, we'll start doing that, but I don't really know. It's my biggest engagement issue is the people that were sat for 8 weeks without a ping, made back to active, and then we have this horrible, I don't want to seem like I'm passing the blame, but we have where EA's like going to work and you have to come see us again. So when they fall out of work, they should just assume they don't have to come back in.
Yeah, I have that.
And so when we're calling people, they're like, oh, I was told I didn't have to come back in there because I'd found a job. And I'm like, you're not working there anymore. And you still are mandated to come and see us. And then I have a period of just not seeing these people until I have to go down the route of doubt raising them or speaking to John and he puts a note on their journal.
Yeah, I'm making a lot of people active at the moment who obviously haven't pinged. And I'm just getting no attendance because it's been, however long, and they think that they don't have to come back. I just don't think it's well communicated, probably at the job entry stage, because I think a lot of the time, even myself, like we're guilty of putting jobs on, putting the into-work meeting on, but it's not actually being attended. We haven't called out to the participant. We haven't sat with the participant and gone, what do you need to go into work and sustain work? We don't actually do that. So I think there needs to be a little bit more emphasis. Although me and John do send out texts saying, we're your primary contact from now on. If you do need anything, give us a call, give us an email on this number. I don't think people are inclined to. I think there just needs to be a little bit more emphasis on that.
So is that something we can do on our strategy, Jay? Build a little bit of that into the strategy agenda and talking about what good looks like and how it would help us and improve things?
Because obviously off the back of that, yeah, like I think I've heard since me and Soph have done rapid response and we've had the full service decline thing where then they come to us, I think I've heard 3, maybe 4 EAs say to their participants, you'll be supported by John or Sophie. So it's kind of like, where's the rest of them doing that? And we've just lost one of them as well. One of the EAs that did that historically has just left. So now we're down to probably 2 or 3.
And she was really good at sending that text out as well.
Exactly. She was like the congratulations text, you'll be contacted by John or Sophie. You'd hear her do the interwork meeting. It's kind of like, that's obviously her job starts to be huge, but losing Emma on that side of things is going to be massive as well. So yeah, I think we need kind of like a reset on that side of things to make sure that so it flows better. I think it's because it kind of, like I say, once they go into work, they get told they don't have to come and see us anymore.
I would argue that actually being accurate with the attendance of the interwork meeting would be a really good gauge for that. If we say you attended it, you've actually attended it, and there's notes in there, and you have an understanding of when they're going to work, how they're going to work, any barriers to work, you will then have confidence that they've also been spoken to about yourselves. But if we're blindly attending things for the sake of, I think I need to do this for the workflow, that's probably when it breaks, because the interwork meeting will have no value whatsoever. The participant won't have been spoken to, and that probably is reflected in our in sort of our net promoter score, where when I would almost certainly wager 90% of that's coming from the exit review, because the interwork meetings probably aren't anywhere near the required attended level that we need.
I'd put
to
a
get
good
you to
wager
engagement.
on. Yeah, I'd put good wager on some of the participants that are in work don't know that we know they're in work because they haven't attended the interwork meeting. but we've attended it on the system. If that makes sense.
So, in summary, we've got a lot of like pre-rapid work to do, I'm guessing.
Yeah, but then obviously
Um,
there's more. That means I'm not going to sit here and say, look, it's all the other first job EAs up for them to do. Like me and Sophie can do more. We're going to do more. Like
Okay,
it's
but
not.
if we
It's a collective.
if we look at it from a journey, then if we first look at what we can do pre-rapid, and then we can move on to what rapid can do.
Yeah.
Better too. So into work meetings need to be just accurate and before the job start date.
Yeah, can you flash them if they've been failed to attend?
Yes, it's just a Ryan appointment. There's no barrier to anything. There is no contractual. They must attend that meeting, because if we've got I've started work today 40 hours a week, and we haven't bothered turning that into an into-work meeting, which happens quite a lot, I'm guessing, then we're never going to get it ever again, because they're never going to pick up the phone call and have a proper conversation with us, or we're not going to try enough to make it happen.
I would suggest there's very few jobs where, if we know that somebody's starting on Monday, into work meeting, in my mind, going back to work routes days, was almost like they would come in on the Friday afternoon. You'd sit down with them, you'd go through your checklist, you'd make sure they're all okay. They've got the bus fare to kind of get there on Monday morning. They've checked out the route, all that kind of stuff. That is the into-work meeting. You do that, sign all that off, and then they go into work. I think a lot of our into-work meetings are kind of an afterthought, because we've already got the evidence. They started the job like 3 months ago, and we've just kind of found out. So we're never going to physically get them in because they're not in. So it's a means to an end to get a job on effectively, but we're not really doing that into work meeting, are we, a lot of the time?
We can't do them before we've put the job placement on. Vera will fail us on audit if it's done prior to the job start. So even though the EAs are having the meetings like the week before, probably, that somebody's going into work and they're giving them day riders, if they do the actual meeting, it fails Vera's audit, because they won't be flashing till the following Monday or whatever.
Is it because it's their into-work meeting is before their start date?
Yeah.
Okay.
So then it
that's stupid. It should be called something else then, shouldn't it? Bloody ridiculous, is that? Okay.
But that I had I had a fail for Pat a couple of audits ago, where we'd done the interwork meeting, and he was starting at Posh on Saturday, so we did it all on Friday, and he started and on the Saturday.
That makes no sense. How can you do an interwork meeting after they've started work? Surely you do it before. I don't know.
So we have to be careful of
mine's
that.
blown. Yeah, I suppose. Okay.
But it's the offer of full service as well. We haven't just got one point to do this. If we're doing an offer of full service and actually speaking to them and saying, you're under 80, you're staying with us, or do you want to just stay with us? You're working 20 hours a week. If we do that properly, we're not going to lose the engagement.
Yeah.
I think that bit's working and has definitely improved. With anybody under 16 hours, we're definitely doing a lot better on offering full service and keeping in touch with them.
Yeah,
agreed.
But I think it sounds like the biggest change that you explaining a few minutes ago, John, is around, and Sophie's around. If we're getting somebody into work, the conversation should be happening that if you fall out of work, we're still here to help. The expectation is that you still engage with us. It might not be that you come back to me as your advisor, however, and there's no reason why they can't introduce, if they come into the office, introduce both of you, similar to that we would do with Karen, our trainer, or these are our business managers, or Tara's our recruitment manager, John and Sophie are our rapid response employment advisors. If you fall out of work, you'll be working alongside of those, and they can kind of get you back into work kind of more quickly.
Yeah, I mean,
just as a bit of an intro.
Yeah, I don't know why it's not sold as more of a positive.
Yeah.
Because these people that go into temporary work, like 2, 3, 4 week agency jobs, why would they not want additional support when the contract comes to an end?
Yeah.
Especially since we have so many people going into agencies at the moment.
Yeah, and we'll just have more throughout autumn.
Yeah.
And then the retail jobs that are temp jobs until after Christmas, like that's where my January, February caseload came from, was the Christmas jobs. I had a caseload of nearly 70 because these people just came out of Christmas.
We need to tell the EAs. Some might know, some should know, but again, we can't just assume. So a lot of this is what we're doing at the minute, is resetting those expectations. And if we tell everybody this is how the conversation needs to happen, this is what we expect, then if it doesn't happen further down the line, we can tackle that. But at the minute, I think there'll be various. If we did a straw poll now, sat down everybody individually in a dark room and asked them, we would get different ways that they would come up with kind of selling that. So if we can teach and coach and then get them to do it, then we should be in a much better place moving forward.
So power action for October.
Well, yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah, but we can do it as part of a kit. We can absolutely. I think the strategy J is a good. That will be a good kind of half an hour or 40 minutes just to kind of go through. And if we give some of the explanation in the background, because probably a lot of your colleagues don't really know what you both do on a day-to-day kind of basis. So if you can say, look, this is a bit of a frustration, so therefore we need the process to be a little bit better beforehand, and as we say, follow that journey from kind of start to finish, it will make a lot more sense, I think. Yeah, no, like that. Okay.
So that's into work meetings and sort of offer full service. Would we not look at the exit review as well, because they do cohort? What 50% of what 70% of what they do, or 60% is cohort related? Would we not look at the exit review being sort of a bit more compatible with them coming back in the following weeks to meet John and Sophie, and almost the exit review is actually confirming your first appointment with John and Sophie? Because as soon as we lose them at post cohort, we never get. Well, John and Sophie will say, I don't know how you think they get in the back.
How many participants actually get to exit review that whether we actually speak to them? I mean, I don't know, but I'd imagine it's tiny. But no, please prove me wrong, because
I haven't got the evidence to hand. I'll have a look, but I hear at least do them. I know they do happen. I don't know how common they are, but if they're not happening, then I would say that's probably how we fix the cohort engagement piece.
I probably wrongly assume that by the time they've reached month 12, very few participants are actually still engaging with us, to be quite honest with you, because why would they?
But they do. I mean, if I look across at Pat and Derek on the board, that's when that good news story came at Derek's exit interview.
I'm probably out of touch.
We did the 6 month plus caseload handover in Peterborough too last month, and the disengagement was like minimal. They're not seen in 28 days was like 30% or something. It was maybe it's an anomaly, but there was more complaints of, oh, it's this person, rather than, oh, this person never attends.
It's probably that we're probably not getting them to work at that particular point in time, which is probably that's probably where I look at more. I'm looking at kind of job starts, the months that people kind of go into, and a lot of it is kind of heavily weighted towards the front end of them being on the contract with us. So once you get to kind of month 10, 11, and 12, there's going to be a smattering, but there's not going to be that much. So that's probably my assumption that that's linked to the engagement level, but it sounds like it isn't, which is good because we want people engaging. But I think, yeah, there definitely needs to be a handover towards the end to kind of say, just because we're doing an exit review with you and you finish your 12 months on the programme, it doesn't mean to say that we can't continue to support and help you.
I think that's where we're going wrong, is we're explaining it as a 12-month programme.
Yeah.
We can't offer additional 6 months support if we're going to sell it as a 12-month programme. We're going to have to start selling it from the initial at an 18-month programme and get the roots ingrained in early, because if we tell them at the initial and they don't want to be here, it's a 12-month contract, they are counting down 365 days until they can leave. And it's not okay. We might change their look on it within that time, but they're still going to count down the days until they don't have to come in again. So if we sell it as an 18-month program, and Jason, you mentioned something about the Orion changes coming up.
Yeah.
Once that comes up, it makes it a little bit easier for us me and Sophie to be able to plan into our diaries and chase people up and things like that, because they'll be missing appointments, missing time, so we can chase them for that. But until we correct the fact to say, this is your last appointment, everything else is voluntary, we've already lost them.
Yeah, and I do hear that wording quite often at the exit stage. This is your last appointment. This is everything now.
Yeah, well, it's no wonder that nobody's wanting to engage with
Do
you
you-
two when it gets to kind of month 13. Then I was just going to mention about the Orion bit because I don't know who I've spoken to and who I haven't, and I don't know when this is going to happen either, but I think it's imminent. So there's going to be a new drop down on Orion, which basically where we've got kind of different statuses at the minute. I don't know, employed status, active status, disengaged status, outrage status. There's going to be a new status that comes into play called post-program support. So basically, anybody then within that kind of 13-month to 18-month period, if we're engaging with them and we're wanting to try and do stuff with them, we can put them onto post-program support status and it will unlock Orion again for us. So whereas everything now beyond kind of 12 months is greyed out, this post-program support status will bounce everything back into colour again.
Will that
The
give
only-
us finance as well?
No.
Okay.
That was what I was going to ask.
Yeah,
But it-
which is something that might hamstring us, but I think there's other conversations going on in the background regarding
look, you
kind of
mean
how
Build
we
stuff
get
Sophie
around
into
that.
himself?
Orion though, so you
Sorry,
can get
second?
automated text messages and stuff.
Yeah.
You get all the prompts.
I think you can do all that. I think that's where it will allow us to kind of book appointments, because at the minute, anybody that we're doing beyond that kind of 12 months, so it's grayed off, we can't do anything, can we? We can probably
I was trying
dialogue.
to
We can
future book-
dialogue stuff, but we can't.
Yeah.
We
I was
can't do
trying
any
to
more than
future
that.
book some appointments, but as soon as they get to that 52 weeks and 3 days, it just advisor cancels them automatically.
Yes. Yeah, it will.
So I'm like, I tried to book this person in for 4 appointments over 8 weeks so they can come in. She means she's due to start at Compass in a couple of weeks, but if I had this engagement with her like I wanted to off Orion, she probably would have been there already because I would have done her paperwork for her.
Yeah.
So that's just is our Achilles heel.
So I think I got the understanding that the change was imminent, but I don't know how soon. But yeah, I think within a matter of kind of weeks it will be there. Whether we will get any instruction on how to utilise that in the best practice or the best way, I don't know. But yeah, it was mentioned that finance is still something that we can't particularly offer beyond that 12 months. But I don't know. There's probably further discussions going on around that and how that may or may not impact. Because I don't understand why that would be a particular issue. If that person, I can understand the problem with when people are in work. Again, we've got to be careful of kind of what finance we can issue regarding tax implications and all that kind of stuff. But if you're working with somebody in that kind of tracking period that's not currently in work, I don't understand why that should be any different to whether we're doing that in month 15 or month 8.
I've
But-
had to previously do manual PGAs twice or 3 times in this contract, and each time someone from central processing said basically we have to have promised financial support prior to 52 weeks because of some contractual reason. It wasn't like it was an Orion issue per se, it was some contractual
It probably is,
framework sort of thing.
Yeah.
But we've had a couple of participants we've put jobs on that have been closed, and obviously when you put a job placement on, it opens up Orion for
Mhm.
you. And we have done PJAs for those, and we haven't had anything come.
It
So if
changes
it's
their status though,
outcome-
doesn't
So
it?
if it's outcome rather than cohort time on program related, you can. But if you're in like month 13, 14 or something, that is the barrier. It's not I've hit outcome in 6 weeks or something on program, then you could open up the placement and give me vouchers because it's still within that 12 months. Seemingly, I mean, I haven't got any sort of evidence to back that up. But each time I've done the manual PGA, they've been very clear with, well, make sure you got the documentation on Orion to say it was promised, because we can't do this outside of the 12 months if it's not been documented in a appointment or a dialogue.
Can we get some guidance from Matt Sheldrick on that, whether in this
Yeah.
scenario now, whether we can or we can't?
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll ping him a message after this and we'll get some guidance. Do we know if the JCP journal communication happened for the careers fair?
No, it didn't. He came back on everything else, like Karen's question about whether she could sit with participants, unlock their journals with them and show them their commitments. He came back to feedback that he's got a meeting with 2 decision makers next week to see how we can deal with like participants who have a job. So like Nicholas Aston refused to go to work with Staffline this week when he was offered a shift because he was cooking his mum's tea. So John's working on how we can put that into context, make it live, and get a decision maker to work on that. So he is working on that. But he, I think with the careers there, text, it just didn't happen, and we were quite short in time asking him to do it.
So it could happen though.
It could
Yeah.
happen. Yeah.
Andrew assured us that he was going to do it.
Yeah,
When me and Jason spoke to him.
He did, and he reckoned it was a couple of minute job, didn't he? That
Yeah,
he was almost going to do after last Friday's call, but
Oh,
Yeah, he was determined to do it while we were there.
but
sorry,
but
I only spoke to John, so I don't know what Andrew did. I don't know. So if Andrew
Yeah.
did it, that's great.
yeah,
But
so
Andrew,
we don't know.
Andrew
for sure, do we?
says quite a lot sometimes, but
And he doesn't always do.
in
no.
reality, it doesn't happen.
I mean, the application would be massive for anything we do, but for you two, if we did have a system in place where you could get,
But that's most definitely
cohorted.
most definitely in their remit to be able to do for us.
Mm.
Because we've spoke about that plenty of times before. But yeah, we probably need to see it in action, and we need at some point we need to kind of say we need you to do this, know that they've done it, and then see what the output of that is.
someone happy to push out a I don't know, a test comms, whether it's SIA, whether it's CRC course related, just do something as a proof of concept almost, that we don't break the system with 800 messages, but something where we know it works, because I guess that's the
What,
Well,
as
I
in,
think-
like, we do like a job goal report of someone who wants security, and just like, John, can you just send comms to these people to say that we're doing this course?
I don't know how they do it. I don't know if it's easier to go click all intensive restart, or whether they can filter by things. I imagine they probably can't filter by things like that.
If we
Seeing
put a
what I've seen.
proposal together of what we want to do, we can hand it to Andrew on Tuesday
We can ask him on Tuesday, can't we?
when he's here at 3:00 and say, could you pump this out now? If he said to you two that it's as quick as that, he'll have his system. He can just literally put those people on, can't he, and send.
Because if it is that simple, I don't know why we're not doing it more often for more courses.
Well, yeah.
It's a good question. But you don't know until you know, do you?
Yeah, that's what I'm
I
saying.
don't know,
We'll find out on
it's-
Tuesday how easy it is. But
Cool.
I mean, I think for this call, where the benefit becomes in that is kind of the monthly cohort stuff, which I guess we'll
Mhm.
come on to in a minute. But that's probably where you two are trying to do what you can do, but you're just kind of pushing snow up or water up a hill at the minute. We need some support and help on that, because a lot of those participants that we want engagement for are not engaged, which is why you're going with your emails. I mean, going back to the earlier point, I think the stuff that we're asking of kind of John or Andrew is great. The stuff that we're doing regarding kind of texting and emailing is kind of great. In an ideal world, or a lot of your role should be talking to participants, but if they're not there and engaged because they've not been told initially that we're going to continue to kind of want to speak to them, or they're just not picking up anyway, that is stopping us really from doing what we need to do. And I think that is affecting some of our bottom line numbers that we're trying to achieve, because we literally cannot get in front of these people to resell stuff or sell stuff as strongly as you two would.
And it's also the reason, like, we have people that are overdue their outcomes, because obviously I've been previously burnt by closing their placement, then they get in contact with them to tell me they're still in the same job. Then I've got to raise a DAR to get the job back to employed. If me and Soph just had that 5 minutes, 10 minutes with John Corson, like, can you just talk me through this list of 10, 20 people, and just let me know if they're still earning small earnings through the JC through their employer, and then we can update that, and then we can offer them the full service again and get them booked back in with their advisor if they're not working as many hours as we've got in the system, or not earning enough because they're under the threshold. Like, we just need to just tick a few boxes within Rapid with me and myself, Sophie and myself, where we can then just make it cleaner, because then the cohort stuff becomes a lot easier than we'll know where people are and what the situation is. Whereas their prep date will be like, oh, they're due this date. Realistically, they're not.
The calculator will help us with that as well, won't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm saying to all mine, put the calculator on like we used to in work routes, and you've got then to look at, and you can see when expected outcome is, because we know we've got a few that are low wages, low hours coming through. So that calculator is going to be really important to us.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a watch the space, I guess, if that JCP comms things work. That takes us on to just cohorts in general, because there's so much to do there, and I don't think we can rely on just JCP communication, in my opinion, at least anyway. So I don't know. What's the current? What do you currently do with cohorts? I guess what's
182.
Yes, tracking. Yeah.
So initially, I mean, it's something we've slacked on, or I've definitely slacked on. Is we used to invite them every Friday. We got booked out for a job club that we invite them to, or we try to invite them to. We were sending out letters, we were sending out flyers to their addresses to get them booked in to come and see us. So for this month, what would it be? April, May 22. We're getting them invited in so we could then get them to outcome, but we just weren't getting any traction on it at all. So it's literally just reverting back to the JCP to see if they are in still work, because they're not communicating with us when we've tried to call them. We send out letters to get in contact, or we've emailed them, or carrier pigeons to their front door. I don't know what more we can do. Without guidance would be lovely. If you three or so, if you've got ideas of what more we could do, I'm more than happy to try something different.
At the moment, it's way too ad hoc, because I know if I'm doing a job search on behalf of someone who's quite job ready, who's post cohort, I'll send them out to them, they'll apply, and then that's it. I don't have an appointment with them to like follow up on it, for example. So I suppose that's where the post
Program support.
that's going to come in handy,
because it's going to enable you to filter a little bit more through those that are engaging with you, rather than you just got it on a spreadsheet somewhere or written on a pad or whatever it may be, or you trust into your memory.
And in defence, me and Sophie are still working. We're obviously working with the oldest stuff, so we're still working on stuff where Rapid was literally new to me. So the stuff that I was still doing was, so when it comes to like December, January and February 23 cohort, it will be so much easier because the comms have got so much better throughout the team. We're still working with really slack comms from like the oldest cohorts.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, as we progress through this and the cohorts,
it will get better and better.
It should obviously get better, and obviously as performance gets better within the office, then obviously the standard outcome rate that we should be hitting, hopefully the number, fingers crossed, will be smaller, because obviously under threshold we're still supporting, over threshold we're more reliable, and then actually getting their outcomes claimed. So all the older stuff is where me and Sophie are really struggling with, because comms weren't great. Comms is getting better, so hopefully the support we offer and we're doing now will be received and reciprocated.
The things we need to do, because I'm not saying we've lost complete focus in this, but I suppose it's been jobs, and this is, I suppose, what I was trying to explain on Wednesday in there when I was kind of doing the stand-up, sit-down bit. All of our focus really, rightly but also wrongly, has just been on first jobs, because we're getting that message from up above all the time. You're behind, you've got to get on top of this. Is this one on these kind of pip calls each week with kind of Helen Easter. And outcomes is kind of a side bit of that. Apart from Aldo's like going for gold thing and trying to raise a bit of profile, it's not as in our faces as it should be. And I think this is what we've got to make most of in the next quarter, in getting it into everybody's faces. And I was talking to you the other day about this, John, in that we need to display that somewhere. So let me just kind of share, hang on a second. This is kind of where we're currently at from a cohort point of view. So, I mean, we're literally today is the last day of the March cohort that we can influence, and we're 20 outcomes shy. So we've failed. Thankfully, every other site, or just about every other site in the home counties, has failed as well, because March 22 was a horrible month for everybody. April, I think, John, you're reasonably confident. I mean, there's only 4 there. I think we should get that. May, I think we've got a chance, kind of Soph as well, to be honest with you. But behind that, there's still some numbers that we've got to work on. But
you're probably the July and August ones that scare me. Everything else up till what I can see there is I'm confident we'll get.
but you're probably aware of that a little bit by default, because occasionally I kind of send stuff through to you, although you haven't got access directly to those reports yourself, have you? So it's more from kind of what Mark might be sending. Jill, do you look at this? I mean, there's no right or wrong answer, but do you ever look at this? Mark, do you look at this?
Only
look at
if
it.
we're in, only if we discuss it in managers
Yeah,
meeting, then I look at it.
Yeah, exactly. And we don't, and that's not a wrong answer. But I think what we've got to do is that we've got to be more aware of that, but make everybody across the whole team and in with speech more aware of that as well, and almost like have that as a countdown focus as well, because we've been kind of counting down the numbers and trying to push hard to get everybody for this quarter to hit our kind of quarterly targets, but we forget about some of this in the background. So behind this 4, it's like, well, there are participants that kind of sit there that primarily you're now dealing with, John, but actually it's everybody's responsibility for that, because it's the type of job that we're putting people into in the beginning, the conversations that we're having, the amount of hours that they're going into. We've probably put some of these jobs on in the past that might have been 12-hour a week, 10-hour a week jobs, not kept them on full service. They're never ever going to get to outcome because there just isn't enough time at the rates that they're running. So the more that we impress that on everybody, and we have got better even this month, in the future that'll be a lot better. But we've got to recover some of this and be more aware of kind of what participants sit behind these numbers at the minute, and what we can do for them. So I think we need everybody to be aware of that and have it kind of displayed a little bit more. A couple of the other bits and pieces that came out of my meeting down in Colchester about a week and a half or so ago. So general consensus was amongst kind of Helen and SOMS, and probably OMS to a certain extent, is that once we get to probably month 17 or 18, actually, if you're doing anything with those parts, it's too late. The horse has already bolted. So if we're putting lots and lots of time and effort into those particular months, we probably need to re-divert your times away from that, because if it gets there, it will get there. If not, it's probably already gone and it's kind of too late. So we can't ignore it, but we'd probably need to do less with those cohorts up and probably until, well, month 13, 14, 15, 16. If we are doing some stuff, there probably is still enough time, depending on, I guess, using the calculator, what work we're getting people into, what hours they're doing, hourly rate and all that kind of stuff, we probably can influence.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that is getting trialed, which is not directly related to this, but hear me out, is that from October, Chelmsford and Watford are doing a trial, whereas as soon as 6 months is up on the programme for participant, if that EA has not got them into work by that particular point in time, they just move to another EA. And what they're looking at doing, and this potentially is a little bit kind of controversial around kind of the targets that are setting, is looking at having EAs that just purely work on participants that have been on the programme for more than 6 months. It's almost like splitting down the middle to have EAs that deal with people from 1 to 6 months, and then EAs that deal with participants that are kind of 7 to 12 months, which I guess is probably a little bit similar to what we've got with you in your tracking period, because you're dealing with everybody from 13 to 18 months, and you're kind of targeted kind of slightly different, where you've kind of got no first job kind of targets. But so that is what Chelmsford and Watford are going to kind of start and trial a little bit of kind of that, and literally just moving caseloads around. There's no reason, they're saying, why any of the sites can't do that or slightly amend that trial or do something kind of a little bit differently. Now, what I'm thinking now that, John, you're working kind of in Peterborough 1, and so if you're in Peterborough 2, and once it comes to that kind of 13 months or the 182-day tracking, you've kind of got your monthly cohorts, is to whether at some point we can get to a stage that we might do something like that within Peterborough. But let's say, for example, so we're going into October now for next month. So if we were going to do the cut off at anybody that started kind of 6 months ago that is now going into month 7 at the beginning of October, that would be whose cohort? One of yours, John, eventually, because you do with it October, December, February, April, June ones, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
that those say move into kind of team 1, and then the following month the November ones move into kind of team 2. So eventually we'll get to a stage where beyond 6 months stuff is already kind of sat within the 2 teams that you're working with, so that when it gets to that point that it's then going to tip over into kind of the 182-day tracking period, it's already part of kind of the smaller team that you're working on, rather than it being just spread out and about all over the place. And then probably we can start and influence some of the activities that we're doing cohort wise before then, so that it just makes it a bit of a smoother transition once we get into that kind of month 13, 14, 15, 16. It's coming. It's whether we want to try and do something now, because I think if that trial happens, whether it works or not, we'll be forced kind of partly down that route as a branch in any case. And it's how we best do it.
I think it, not quite that, but we obviously did the 6 month plus case though changeover in Peterborough too.
Yeah.
And I think Elise is opposite me still. You're familiar with Elise coming to you and saying, you know, that's going to affect my attendance and whatever. When I pull the FJ report, Elise's attendance hasn't dropped anywhere near as much as she suspected it would, which proves to me she's engaging people that previously were failing to attend or not having the correct application of effort. So even if we're just talking from bums on seats and attendance, it's a small sample size, talking 230 or 40 participants all in for Peterborough 2 that moved, but like it's working. I'm seeing those that weren't attending are, and I've had record amounts of people debating about who gets the job start and when does the tracking period end, showing that a different tact, a different voice, a different face. I mean, we see that with caseload handovers when people leave quite often, when someone leaves,
but
they inherit.
If we could, and it's sometimes the logistics and the thought of doing this, because it is a bigger piece of work because we're a bigger site. But if we could say, for example, right, so October, so what's it going to be? April 20. No, October 20. Now, what was 6 months ago? April 23.
April 23.
So April 23 cohort. Anybody that moves into, it'll be March, won't it? Because it'll be that they've ended the 6 months. So anybody from March 23 cohort, we could say from next week. We won't do this, by the way, but hypothesizing, everybody that's from March 23 that is still active, we move into Mark's team's caseload next month. So then they start and kind of build that up. It means that probably your team will get a little bit more of a hit, because you won't only be, well, you'll have to take some in from Jill's. I suppose if they're already in your cohort, you would just move them amongst your team, but there would probably be an element of kind of some of that cohort sitting with Jill's team that would just move into Peterborough 2, for example, which might make you just top heavy for a month. But then so that might mean that your caseload is a little bit lower, Jill, so you take on a few more referrals for that particular month. But then the following month, it's the reverse. So Jill, you're then taking in the April 23 cohort. And then Mark, you're taking in kind of November, a few more of the kind of fresh referrals. So it just keeps the numbers evened up. But then you as managers, you've got a closer investment, I suppose, in those particular monthly cohorts. So we can say to Mark, alongside Soph and then the rest of the team, okay, you're now responsible for trying to ensure that you're more aware of that the participants in that particular monthly cohort, the numbers that we need to eventually get to from an outcomes point of view, and we're just starting that process effectively with 12 months before they hit their 547 days. Rather than we just do it as soon as it hits kind of Soph and John at month 13, where effectively you've probably got 3 or 4 months to influence, and then the last couple of months where we're just drifting into oblivion, or we may not get there. I probably haven't explained that very, very well. I probably need to diagram it, but Does that kind of make sense?
So
Yeah,
in
does make sense.
principle, you get to 6 months. They then get cohorted into a specific team. So then, as a BM or with rapid support, we've got complete visibility of April 2023.
You've got better visibility of that, because at the minute it sits amongst both of you and Labika and all of the EAs. We've got people scattered all over the place for all cohorts over all different months, all different EAs. So you'd narrow it down a little bit. You'd at least half the size of it, because then it's coming under you as managers, you two as kind of senior EAs that have also got that rapid responsibility, plus the other 4 or 5 colleagues that you've got within your team. So it's easier to manage. And then we could just kind of turn around and that would be a bit more of a focus. Whereas at the minute, there's too many fingers in the pie. Just because we're a big site. I suppose in a smaller site, that's easier to manage because you might only have one BM in there anyway. So that is their responsibility, or if there are a couple of BMs, that they'd be on it a little bit more. But with the size that we've got, that's where we've got to kind of try and break stuff down. And it shows, like with this month, with when we're targeting individuals and we're targeting individual teams, once you break down the numbers, it becomes so much more manageable than just looking at a massive big number from the offset. And there wouldn't be that many. I mean, I don't know what we've got. Well, I mean, will this kind of show what we've still got? One of these does, I think, doesn't it?
Cohort summary, is it?
Or is it cohort health?
That might be health.
It is health.
Yeah.
Because it shows
job readiness code, and then you get the cohort and the amount.
It shows how many people are still. And let me scroll down a second to scroll this across. Because I mean, it's the last working day of September, but effectively we've got 9 active participants left. So let's move this to, so what we're talking about, April 20. So if we were going to do this, we've got 61 active participants from, we're looking at March, aren't we? 73 from March. So effectively 73 would need to get distributed. Some probably already sit within Peterborough 2 mark. So if that EA has kept that participant from day one, you could just move it into kind of somebody else's name and just do a bit of an internal swap. And if, I don't know, 30 of those, say, or 35 of those were yours, Jill, you would just lose those 35 to filter into Mark's team. If we looked at the overall numbers, you'd probably take on some extra referrals this month to get your team back up to parity a little bit more. And then once we got around to April, at the minute, there's only 61 that are active. So then we'd do the same in April, that again, anybody that's been with the same EA for 6 months, they move to another EA within your team. But then anybody that's in team 2, you chuck those over the fence and you pick up those. So going forward, your responsibility cohort wise, Mark, is always March, May, July. Yours is always Jill, April, June, August, and kind of each month just swapping in and out, because that's effectively where John and Soph are coming into play at the minute for their cohorts. Maybe just align it a little bit better. That's kind of my thought process. But it's doing it and making it work. And we would probably then, if we did that, because I think what is more controversial is what is being suggested at the minute, where we have specific EAs that are 7 to 12 months, it's going to be more difficult for them to hit their targets. So unless you're going to say, okay, we'll target those with 4 job starts, but then if we've got an overall target still to hit as a team, it may be then that people that have got cohorts months 1 to 6 are just solely looking at, I don't know, doing like a 6 job start target or something. So either we go down that route, or we do something that's a little bit different, but with a bit more focus on it. I don't know. I know I've gone up a little bit of a tangent there. It's not directly rapid response related, but I think now with the kind of the team move that we've done, that is probably something we need to consider moving forward.
I think just starting off with just general cohort awareness amongst the office, and understanding of, okay, we made this many people active in September on Monday, that means this many of those need to go into work, and almost just, whether it is through your approach or any other way, I don't know, but we need to be pragmatic and just quickly start to whittle down the cohorts, so we're not left with 50 or 30 or 20 even required from a 13, 14-month-old cohort, because it just seems to become quite a snowball.
So
Yeah.
with Vicky Potter in Newcastle, obviously they communicate that information and they communicate it in pounds as well, don't they, to their teams? How did they do that? Do you know what their communication route is? Is it a visual? Is it
They have
verbal?
competitions. They have competitions, and it'll be like John might say, "Well, I've generated £14,500 this month," and then Sophie will go, "Well, I've got 16," and Sophie wins the prize. You know, they make it into a fun thing, they're competitive, but from an outcome perspective, they treat it as a, "You've done this month, well done." Quite real, palpable.
Have we got any visuals of what they do with that? Did you see it, Jason, when you were up visiting?
I didn't see any visuals. I can go back and double check whether. No, I mean, they just talk about it a little bit more. I think there's just a general more aware at an EA level of kind of tracking some of their outcomes. I mean, they've only got one RRA up there. I don't know how much. You see that. I guess when people kind of fall out of work and then you two get them back into work and then they come under your name, a lot of the time then you're getting the outcomes from that, which is right. I think that's absolutely right that kind of should happen, because effectively you're doing that kind of donkey work to kind of make sure that they get to kind of outcome status. I don't know how that works in all of the other sites, whether everybody that kind of falls out of work definitely goes back into kind of an RRA. And I think on smaller sites where they've not got a rapid response agent, it probably just goes back to the EA in any case. So from targeting, it makes it a little bit more difficult, because I guess you two are going to get the lion's share of outcomes on a monthly basis, because you're just picking up more people that fall out of work. But we've got to make everybody aware of kind of what's going on, I think, and everybody kind of equally responsible for when they get, as I said earlier on, when we're putting people into work, what the benefit of the company or to the company is if they sustain in work and they hit outcome, versus if they drop out of work, the impact that it has on us, you, the company, if we're not getting somebody to outcome by the time it hits day 547.
I think it is hard because there's so much emphasis on jobs, the job as opposed to the value of the outcome.
Yeah.
So I think regardless of whether somebody works a year in that job or whether they work an hour, it's still a job and it's still valued just as equally, essentially. So
Yeah.
I think it is difficult, and you can't blame people for not focusing on the outcome. But
no, because we don't peddle that on a daily basis. It's jobs. We don't talk about outcomes, but we've got to get that more into people's psyche. And I say in Newcastle, that seems to be happening a bit more. They're not pulling up trees. I mean, they're still a little bit behind, probably not as far behind as we are. I think we've also got a problem just with our demographic, that it takes people longer anyway to get through to outcome with the types of work that we've kind of got local. They are tending to be lower paid hours or lower paid jobs on kind of 0 hours contracts or kind of part-time kind of contracts, 16 hours, 20 hours, 12 hours, whatever it may be. So we've not got the luxury of some of the other sites that are just getting to outcome more quickly. But then that does cause us a problem, because we've got then, if we're assuming that somebody's going to stay in that job until they've earned that amount of money, it's probably going to take them 6 or 7 months to do that. And if they fall out of work and we're not aware of that, that's where we're losing our time, because the clock's ticking and we might have lost 2 or 3 months.
So really, it's our way that we need our EAs to sell it, isn't it? We're helping people to find work, and then the key thing is we're going to help them to achieve economic stability.
Yeah, we want them to find sustainable work, which we probably, again, we don't talk about. It's all in the words, isn't it, that we kind of use. It's not just we want to get you into a job, or we've got to change their mindsets. It's not just about getting somebody into a job. It's getting them to a sustainable job so that they can actually, build a better life for themselves and not come back onto benefits until 3 months' time.
And it's that conversation of saying, okay, you're going to an agency now, but when you go to permanent, come and see us. We'll help you with that permanent contract, and
Mhm.
then are you looking to be a team leader or a supervisor? We'll help you with that new CV or whatever. So you're getting that progression and growth. And I know that's an ideal world, and I know that's lots of time, but that's what would help us get to our outcomes.
Yeah, it's just a bit of tweaking our mindsets as well as their mindsets and how we kind of sell stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, like, the focus, obviously Sophie spoke about the focus being the job starts, and we've got this going for gold thing. You mentioned it earlier, Jason, but that's the third time I've probably heard it throughout of all of September.
Yeah, I've not promoted it. Yeah,
So,
I agree. I agree.
Like, it's great that we're performing well as an office this month, and it's great that we're having a great quarter as an office, but we've got this really good incentive that, ironically, that me and Sophie champion, but weirdly, if we get loads of people to outcome, it does mean Sophie have a job here, but we don't promote. We're just promoting the job starts. Like, we're not.
It doesn't get you out of a job. You can just come back to help with first job.
Yeah, but like,
because I can't really afford for two of you, but the volumes still dictate that we do need two of you. But it won't happen forevermore. At some point, we might need to total about.
If we promote it and champion it as the standard outcome is the most important thing, instead of, because if we get the standard outcome, then obviously we're getting the jobs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I think the reason I've not pushed it so much this month is because we started off strongly, and I might have mentioned it a couple of times, but then I know that we're not going to hit targets, so I'm just not worried about it. And as I said before, we can't really influence this month, but I think some of the activities that we're doing now can influence probably November and December. That is going to be the big difference, I kind of think, and that's probably, I'll make more of a conscious effort once this new quarter starts to be champion both bits. We're doing great on job starts. This is how we're doing outcomes. Do you realise that X, Y, Z? And if we can start and put some monetary values on that, talk about it and kick a bit more, display something on the wall, not just numbers based. If we times it by your kind of values mark and almost like have a bit of kind of a money thing on the wall or something to say, yeah, come, let's race to get to 50 grand, 100 grand, whatever it may be. That might.
I think it needs to be celebrated more as well. Like, it's great if someone puts 12 jobs on a month. Great. It's great for the office target, but if none of those hit standard outcome, but then you might have someone who's put 3 jobs on and got 3 standard outcomes, that should be celebrated more because 100% success rate.
Yeah,
we do the same for training, well-being. You submit all these people, then you have a really good attendance. Super, well done. You win something. That is great. We should be doing the same for standard outcomes.
I think with the charter thing that we're doing, Mark and Jason and I talked about what incentives should we have, because when we first set up those KPIs and those incentives, we were rubbish at subbing to wellbeing, we were rubbish at subbing to Skills Academy. We've cracked it now. We don't need those as key performance indicators. So maybe this is the change.
We just shift our focus on something else.
Onto what we want.
I'm conscious of time a little bit here because I've got a few bits to do. We've still got jobs to chase as well, even though we're talking about outcomes. We've got jobs. We need another 3.
How many more people are we going to help today? We don't say jobs. We
yeah,
say,
no,
how
that's
many more people are we going to help
yeah.
today?
Yeah,
I've just helped someone 2 minutes ago.
Okay.
So,
well done.
I'm hoping Labika might have helped 2 or 3 in the last hour as well.
Ace. All right. Well,
I think we've got a bit of a way forward, haven't we? There's still stuff that we just need to kind of firm up on with like JCP and probably some of our processes, and thinking about this, that idea that I've kind of got in my mind around how we can do stuff, and probably cohorts, get John and Andrew to kind of send stuff out kind of cohort wise.
I think the JCP is huge. If we crack the JCPs for the 5 of us, then mine and Sophie's biggest issue then would be engagement. Like, we can't hide behind the fact that we don't have communication with the JCP anymore.
Yeah.
Did we have anybody come to the careers fair from the closed caseload?
Not that I'm aware of.
There were
2 or 3.
Yeah, there were a few. I mean, there's quite a lot. I've handed back feedback forms this morning that we got, so there's quite a few for you, Soph. There's quite a few for you, John. Not necessarily from the closed cohort, but people that you're helping. I think when I was looking through the ID numbers and checking some stuff off this morning, Yeah, I'd say no more than or less than half a dozen. I would have thought from the absolutely closed cohort.
Yeah,
And we
I
d-
was when I was putting these people on the tracker earlier, there was probably three on there that have signed up for jobs that have already claimed all their outcomes.
Right.
So I didn't put them on the tracker just so they didn't get
Okay.
another job from us.
Okay. We'll save it for somebody that really
Yeah,
we
somebody-
need. Yeah, we need.
So in total, 48 employed participants attended.
Yeah.
According to this, that will include some that have been flashed in the follow-up, I imagine, from the course submission report, but
Okay.
7 doubt raised, 1 disengaged,
We had a couple of in easement turn up.
2 easement.
Yeah.
Bit of a smorgasbord.
Yeah, disengaged. Well, it was voluntary. Some of those turned up while I was doing finance.
It'd be interesting to cross-reference if they've got feedback because most have feedback forms. I think when I was sorting out this morning that there's 183 feedback forms that I've kind of chucked back out via Jill and Mark. That they'll be kind of talking to you about potentially at some point, and all the other EAs as well. So most completed a feedback form. So it'd be good to kind of cross-reference some of that depending on what status they're at. Yeah, why have we suddenly got some disengaged ones that are kind of rocked up? What's because effectively we can still get job starts and outcomes and stuff from them, can't we?
Mm-hmm.
Right, good chat.
Nice. I'll send out some notes from this. We've got a lot to talk about on the strategy day, I imagine, involving what we do with interwork meetings and full service and exit reviews. And obviously, if we can put a plan together for Tuesday and present that as a quick proof of concept to Andrew, that would be phenomenal.
Yeah, we'll pick up. Go on.
Obviously, for Monday, John, you're Peterborough one.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing really changes, I don't think. We've established that. So let's just keep up the good work. Jill, I normally share with them the estimated outcome report and the job entry no notification report.
Yeah.
For reference, so I'll just pull that. I'll filter out self-employed, but then John and Sophie will always find someone, or have found traditionally someone that is self-employed, but we've got down as payee, and that's the reference point they'll use to claw cohorted people into them.
Okay, cool.
The only other thing that's on my mind at some point is we might have to think about seating. I still want you two sat together, and I know that every month that goes by, you're moving up the office, down the office, around the office, but where you are at the minute, I suppose we've got bits of team 2 over the far side. Even though you're kind of team 1, or you're going to be kind of team 1, John, it would be good if you next to your colleagues a little bit, but in next to Soph as well. So we almost need to kind of just flip that desk over maybe at some point. I don't know, not necessarily for kind of today or Monday, but it'd be good at some point just to kind of tidy that up, unless we're going to do something a little bit more drastic, but we'll think about that offline. Right, I'm gonna have to go now because
I'll leave it up to you
see
three to
whether
decide. But yeah,
Jill's around.
as long as me and
not
Soph sat
Jill's
together, I
around,
don't care where we
Beak's
sit.
around. Yeah. Right. Okie dokie.
Nice one. Thank you,
Okay.
everyone.
Let's go and
Cheers,
chase
guys.
jobs. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Bye.